Welcome to Soil Science and Management, Chapter 13, and today we're going to talk about soil sampling and testing. So after today, we'll be able to understand why soils are tested, how to sample a soil correctly, what parts of the soil test are there, how to interpret the reports, and then also talk about plant tissue tests. So why do we test soils? The number one reasons we test soils is to determine what nutrients are deficient within those soils, and we can then utilize that information to create viable fertilizer programs to correct those deficiencies, as well as have the strongest plants available that we're going to grow in these soils. We also want to avoid any environmental problems that could be caused by fertilizing. So understanding different parts such as pH and other constituents that are in the soil is very important to understand before we put any fertilizer into the ground. And then we also want to avoid any other nutrient deficiencies, so we can get a full soil report for all of the essential nutrients and all of the detrimental things that might be in the soil to ensure that we're growing strong, healthy plants. So there are varying levels of soil tests. Level 1 would be a deficient soil test, and this is where nutrients are deficient. The nutrient is deficient, it's going to cause growth or productivity impairment, or it's missing a mineral. Level 2 is it's at a critical level that satisfies the plant needs is reached. So level 2 is where you want to see all your different nutrients as they come through on the soil test. Level 3 would be those nutrients are too high and can be verging on detrimental, and then level 4 would be toxic, where that nutrient level is so high that you can't grow plants in that soil without hurting the plant. So there are different methods to identify nutrient shortages. That's going to be a visual inspection. So you're going to look at the plant. You're going to try to understand what the plant is doing and what could be causing those nutrient shortages. You can use a soil test. That's going to tell you exactly what is in your soil and what is available to plants, because they're going to be able to test the different levels and pHs and how those nutrients get to your varying plants. And then there's also tissue tests, and that's basically verifying the soil test to see what is being taken up, what is available, what is being utilized, and the amount of nutrients that are within your plants. So what are the steps to soil sampling? You have, or soil testing, excuse me, you have the soil sample, you have soil test, you have your interpretation, you have your recommendation. So first you have your soil sample. These are going to be taken every 2 to 3 years. Basically, you can sample different areas, or you can sample a specific area to understand. There are a couple different types of sampling. You have conglomerate sampling, you have individual sampling, you can comparison sample. So you are going to try to you do a representative sample from the entire property if you want to understand how all of your soil nutrition is working. And when you take these soil samples, you're going to want to take the top 6 to 9 inches of soil. This is going to be your root zone material to ensure that you don't want to go deeper than that, because roots aren't typically taking up nutrients outside of the 6 to 9 inches. Your sampling procedure, you want to consider choosing subsamples. So as I said before, if you have issues, say you have a field and parts of it grow amazing grass, and there's parts that just you can't get grass to grow there, you may consider taking a special sample from that area where grass is not growing, versus the area where grass is growing to see what is different and how you can maybe fix those properties. You want to make sure that you're only taking soil samples. You don't want to send in organic material or any kind of litter that is on the top of your soil. And then to make that composite sample, you're going to mix certain subsamples from different areas. Now you can either make this composite sample or you can send in your subsamples separately. It depends on what kind of information you're looking for from your property. So we're not going to talk about this a whole lot, but container plants, it is important to sample. Typically, you're going to sample to see if you're having issues in these containered plants, and then that can help you to clear those up. But you want to make sure before you plant any new crops that you do test any soil that you're going to be putting these crops into. So if you're going to be doing sampling and trying to be precise, you should draw a grid pattern, and in each grid pattern you will take certain amount of sample from each grid pattern. And if you have say 10 grids, you're going to take 5 samples from each, corners, center, middle. You're going to do the same for each grid. You're going to then composite those samples together and put them and mix them all together. And this will help to ensure that you are getting a representative sample of the whole property. This is what we talked about earlier. So if you're trying to diagnose a problem, you want to make sure that you're taking representative samples of those different those problem areas and sending them in separately. So making sure that you mark, sample A is healthy turf, sample B is unhealthy turf, and trying to determine what the difference would be and how you can utilize those results to make sample B more similar to sample A. So there are a couple different tests. There are chemical tests. This is an older method and it's not very reliable anymore. Now we're using an extraction and measurement method, and this is basically taking those soil particles and putting them into water and extracting all of the nutrients out, utilizing different constituents to pull those nutrients out, and then determining how much is actually within that certain sample. So other things that can be told in your soil sample besides the chemical makeup is going to be the texture. You can get the amount of organic material measured. They will measure your pH. They will measure the available phosphorus and then any exchangeable potassium that you have within your soil. So these are all very standard parts of your test, and if you send in any test, they're going to give you this information. When you were looking for additional information, then you have to start asking for, I would like to know what my buffering capacity is, what my nutrient load capacity is, if there's any toxic materials, and then they'll start to continue to add tests to your samples so that you can get the information that you're looking for. And then so interpretation and recommendation. Once the lab report is generated by the soil by the soil test, then someone at the lab will analyze that test, determine where the deficiencies are within that soil sample, and come up with a solution to fix the problem. And they will start to make recommendations on what materials that you should use to start to alleviate any issues that you're having. So there is testing that you can do kind of in-house, and this is done with pH meters or EC meters, and you can kind of get a basic understanding of what you're doing within your soil. You can have these basic tests. These are going to be used for preliminary information, not necessarily going to give you super scientific data, but it's definitely going to get you in the right direction, and then you can send in a sample to get more precise data in the future. Something else that's done quite typically is tissue testing in plants. This is often done in combination with soil testing, and it gives an assessment of, so you're going to take your soil sample and you're going to understand what's in your soil, and then you take a tissue sample and you'll understand what is being taken up, and then comparing the two can tell you if there are any issues with your soil or with certain things that may be causing your plants not to be able to take up the nutrients as you'd hope. You want to take and send in younger stems, because those are going to be the ones that have the most current data, for example, on the plant. So you don't want to send in the old stuff because it's going to have older data. It's not going to have the same amount of nutrients that are in the soil now. It's going to be talking about stuff that was there, previous to the current conditions. So in summary, I know this is kind of a short one, but soil sampling is extremely important. Understanding how to take that soil sample correctly, sending in either the composite or the subsample, determining what it is that you want to learn and what kind of information you can get, and then utilizing the recommendations is very important. And soil sampling can make your job as a soil scientist, horticulturalist, much, much easier. So thank you for joining me. See you next time.